how you arrived in South Africa.
I had family living here in South Africa, and I needed to come and visit for various reasons. And I decided to stay in South Africa. And it was during the apartheid years, many years ago, when you were all still young, all right? And I didn't want to take on a job in Johannesburg, because that's the only place I would have found a job, and I wasn't interested in working there. So I had a friend working here at Shongwe Hospital, and I came out to visit, and I just said in passing, "Oh, I think I should do some development work." And he said, "Come do it here, you know." He'll organize a place for me to stay and will introduce me to members in the community or put me in touch with people. That's really what happened. It was really just literally a decision like that. But and of course I gave a year because that's as long as my savings would last. During that year, it was more learning for me rather than me teaching anyone. The only thing I could do is teach people to sew. So that's what I did, and I was given space at Shongwe Hospital, and the ladies came to Shongwe Hospital because it wasn't really full working in those days. At the end of that year, I had put in a couple of proposals to various people or organizations, and I gave it a deadline. And it was by December, if I heard from anyone, then I would stay on another 1 year. At the end of that year, I received a letter from Anglo American to say that they would support an initiative out here. And that's really one of the reasons why I decided to stay on. And the British government as well came out here because of the trouble in Mozambique with the Mozambican refugees coming into the country. They came out and they saw what I was doing. So they then also said that they would assist in putting up a building, a community building for work to be done. And that's the buildings that you saw down there. Not all of them, but it got us started. So we put up 3 large buildings there with the British government money. I was 33 years old, and I'm 66 now.
Wow.
So there you have it. And of course, each year comes, with different set of challenges, and you're looking at, what is available in terms of donor money and what one can do in the area. And then, of course, you've got all the politics to get through with. Because in those days, it was the Mozambican people coming into the country. So I did a lot of work with them in Mangweni. At one stage, we were feeding 30,000 people a month. And that's quite a lot to get going or to organize in terms of logistics. But there were a couple of large organizations working with us, but I was coordinating it as sort of the secretary of the committee that was running it. So I got involved there, and then when the refugees came and subsided and the war was ended, then of course the new government came in, and with a new set of problems. It just a lot of suspicion of why am I here, who am I, why am I doing what I'm doing, and so on. So the suspicion has always been there. It's only now I'm quite well known in this area, so people just leave me alone. They know what's going on. They don't have questions, and they're not as suspicious as what they used to be. And then, of course, the work that we do is also related to what's going on in the community, like the HIV and AIDS. It's huge and has resulted in a lot of fragile children or children living in fragile situations with very little assistance around them. When you go out into the community or out somewhere and you see a child who's got no one to support them and actually living on their own, I mean, you put yourself in their shoes. Can I do this? No, I could never have lived the way some of these kids are living. And you investigate to see, well, where is their infrastructure? Who's around them? Who's helping them? And they've actually got no one. The first child ever, in fact, he's here, the one without the hand. He's the first kid I took in. He was from Mozambique, and he climbed through the electric wires at the border, and he should have died, but somehow he managed to survive. And he was lacerated from head down to toe. If you see, he's got fine scar marks all over his body. So he was the first one. But during the early 2000s, that's when the peak of the HIV and AIDS in this country, where there was no medication at all. And that's when parents were dying like flies, literally. The work I did with the Mozambican people was only an introduction to what I started doing with the people here in terms of death. Death really became a reality. And burying people with my own hands, I can't tell you how many I did in those years. In the year, in about 1999, that's when I realized if I didn't get involved in the HIV and AIDS pandemic, there was actually no reason to be doing the work that I was doing here. A friend of mine who was working in the Department of Health asked me if I would get involved in the HIV and AIDS programs here in this region. And they organized some training for us. And I went along to that. And then when I came back, that's when I started with selecting women in the community and getting started with home-based care, where the carers would go out and look for those who were sick and dying. And when we started that, we were just shattered because we just didn't realize the extent of the problem. And it wasn't just a few here and a few over there. It was like down every single street, someone was dying. And then leaving the children so vulnerable. From the stats, the HIV stats that we're seeing is that there's an increase. Did you notice? Yeah. There's been an increase in the rate of infection in this community. And it's also a younger age group as well. There's not enough warning at all. The government has always encouraged people to go for a test. But what they've found, which is what I've always said, only those who know their status go for a test. It's the risky ones won't go. Those that are actually carrying the disease don't want to know, so they don't want to test. That's a problem. But what we are doing is handing out ARVs. So we've become an extension of the clinic. So people can come to us for their, in fact, all their medication, all their chronic medication can be picked up at our center. So that's what we're doing, which is new. And they want it there because there's such a stigma attached to people who take the medication and we've got so many people coming in there buying seedlings and so on, that people, when they see them going in, they don't know what they're going in for.
It's wonderful.
So it's a good way of handing them out, rather than queuing up at the clinic for a whole day waiting for your pills. All pregnant mothers are tested. They're not asked, can we test? They just automatically test them. So, of course, the children are not, the children are not HIV anymore, born positive, and that's quite a relief. It's these young ones who are not falling pregnant, who are running around, who are spreading the disease. Not the ones that fall pregnant, because they get educated, they get taught, and then they land up going on ARVs, so they become, they don't carry the virus. The virus is minimized by the pills that they're taking. And like the case of Tandy, she was orphan-headed at 11, and she says that at her mother's funeral, when they buried her mother, they were left there alone, and everybody just left and went. And the four of them were just left on their own. Can you imagine? And then they walked home to this one room, which didn't belong to them. And the owner said he wanted it back and actually kicked them out. So they ended up living with a neighbor. And when I went to see the neighbor's house was just a one room. So those are some of the examples. And when you see a case like that, you can't turn them out. You've got to do something.
Yeah.
You've got to find something temporary to support them until you find something permanent. And that's really what landed up with most of these cases you see. There are a lot of cases. There's still a lot of cases because we're living in as I say, a fragile community where the families are dysfunctional. So when something goes wrong, everybody just kind of collapses. We do have a social worker, but like last weekend, we were called to Jackie's Reef, and we met this young girl. She's 18, and she was pregnant, and she was living on her own in an open room, no doors, no windows, not her place, and she had no food, nothing. Now, we interviewed her and tried to sort her out, but she needed somewhere to sleep that night and the next day, and she was about to have her baby. So you can't just interview her and walk away and say, we'll see you tomorrow. So she came here. She came here for the weekend, but on the Monday we then went back, and we were able to reconcile her with a member of family, but she's had a baby in between, had a baby girl. But that's what I'm trying to say, in that we get a lot of referrals. People phone us up and they can't deal with the situation, so they call us, and then we'll try and see. But I'm trying not to take in more children, but I'm landing up with 3 in about 2 weeks' time anyway.
What's their story, Sally?
Lasma, she's in her early 20s, and she has a 4-year-old. Her mother and father died many years ago and has no home. So she was living with the father of the child, and he has now left the family. The family that she's with don't want her there anymore, and don't want the 4-year-old, so she has nowhere to go. She's trying to improve her situation, and she's at the University of somewhere. I've known her for a number of years. She stayed here with us for a year. I said to her she can come and stay with us temporarily until we find something, but I'm not sure how long that will take. And then she asked if her younger sister could come because she's got nowhere to go either. So they've been living with the family, the father of of her child, but they're being abused. And when I say abuse, I don't think not sexually, but more in that they are expected to do all the housework, do all the chores, actually become like little slaves. And then they don't get to eat because the family eats first, and what's left over gets given to them. That's the way it works, and that's hard. I just told her to go when she comes back from university. She's to go there, pack her bags, and just leave, and not to tell them where she's going. So that's Lasma with her sister and 4-year-old. So they'll be here for a while, you see, until we can get them sorted. Those 160 don't have any chance of going to school at all. Imagine those are the ones that can walk there, and you see how big that village is. So there are lots more children who are undocumented. At least the ones going to the center are getting a meal, so they're getting nutrition, and they are learning to read and write. Our next step there would be to start teaching them how to run a little business, when it comes to finance and so on. But it'll take another year because they still need to finish reading and go through that little literacy book that they've got. I mean, you can see how keen they are to knit, how keen they are to sew. You saw they sew hand sewn items. Yes. They know they've got a disadvantage, but at the same time, they're going to try and make a go of things. The difficulty there for us is to find funding for them, because here in South Africa, the companies South African companies don't want to support them. They say we're here to support South Africans, not people from other places. And they haven't been there to see it, so they don't know what they're talking about. And I'm sure if they did come to see that, they would change their minds. But that's how it is, so it's hard. Our biggest need is to just pay Sipiwe a salary, and the cook, the two cooks, and Kevile, her assistant. That's actually 4 members of staff. And then also the feeding. The rest we can get by. When you're not there, what they're doing is that the older kids, the older ones there, the very older ones, they select 1 or 2 of them to assist, to teach the others. So that's what's happening. So they are helping those older ones. And you see, that's why they're going to be so good, and that's why you've got potential leaders in the community and responsible ones as well, because they're beginning to teach the younger ones, and that's how we manage. And also, when you're not there, we actually have more rooms. We use the corridor as a classroom, so there's a little bit more space, a little bit. Because it started off with just providing a meal, and they would come at 11, have the meal, and then go home again. And then I started saying to them, come on, can't we do a little bit more with them? And that's what's happened. And now we've got formal literacy training. And they're so proud. Did they read to you?
They did read to some of the team.
Yeah.
Which was amazing to see, having
seen them a year ago. Yes.
Yeah, a year ago, with no confidence. Not wanting to speak at all, let alone in English.
That's right, yeah.
Rather than their mother tongue.
Yeah.
So the transformation has been really
amazing.
impressive.
Yeah. I've seen some of them collect fire, bring it home, collect water, bring it home. Others are, they're working where they can in the area. Some of them are trying to work for neighbours, either in the gardens or in the houses. But the rest are not doing much at all. They're just sitting around. And that's where the difficulty comes in, because idle hands will always find nonsense. It just doesn't work. You can't sit and do nothing all your life because you don't. You work up some kind of mischief. And that's, we're seeing a rise in petty theft in the communities. There is definitely a rise in that. And then, of course, when they get older, I don't know how the folk will survive. The girls will go to prostitution because they have no choice. They are youth, mainly under the age of 25, and they are selected because they have such beautiful voices. And generally we'll find a team where you have the whole range. We then use them to go to the clinics, to the schools, to educate the people who are there in the queues on health issues and whatever issues that the clinic people are asking us to talk about, and also the schools. Then they get invited out to various functions as well. Then in the afternoons, they get divided up and they go to our aftercare programs and they assist in sport and in drama and music in those various areas. So some of the drama team members actually live out there at Block B. So we're encouraging them to go there in the afternoons and help out there with singing and with dance. So that's really the aim of it.
My soul, when sorrow lies in treeless room, whatever may come, Lord, you taught me to say, it is well with my soul.
We don't see the actual art of singing or the art of dancing as being their career. We just see that as being a stepping stone for them, where they gain confidence, they gain knowledge, and they gain a small amount of information that they can then base certain their ideas on what they want to do, but some other field other than singing and dance, which is very sad, but that's how it is. When it comes to dance, any kind of dance, they can do it. And singing as well. The range is so vast. And what we do is we don't even teach them that side. The only thing that I get involved in when I'm there is stage management, for all that I know. And I don't know very much, but I do what I know, and I have tried to pick up a lot from the internet, so that what we do, especially when they're going, to perform at important functions. They've got to know to stand in the middle and not all in the corner, because that often happens. They don't think it, but they go and stand in the corner, and then out come these beautiful voices. So you don't mind in the end, but one does want to try and put them into a position where you don't laugh at them. In South Africa as a whole, no, not at all. And yet they are so gifted.